Happy Friendships Day! I don't know when Friendships Day is. I don't know if it's a real holiday, actually. Kucha kucha hota hai, turn around. You don't take off a friendship bracelet, okay? That's rule number 1 and 2. Hey there, hello, and welcome back to Mr. Larrie's Craft Show. How y'all doing? This week we're doing macrame. Cause Mr. Larrie, is that why you're surrounded by IKEA's best and brightest greens? Yes, because I have a brown thumb. That's not really true. I mean, I have a brown thumb. No, I have actually managed to keep a few plants alive over the past couple of years. In fact, I don't think I've killed anything for about at least a month now. Whether it is plastic or living, one of the best ways you can showcase your lovely plant friends is with a little bit of macrame. Like this plant hanger here. This is a recreation of a choker that I wore for a good 10 years in high school and college that had like a real starfish in the middle. And I just found it the other day. It's in this house somewhere and it has disappeared. So I just made this one really fast. In fact, this took me just about 30 minutes to make. I was into the puka shells, y'all. I was me and the pooks. Every style of shell you could give me, as long as it came from Claire's or cost less than $10. Whew. Those were the days. So this feels like revisiting my personal past. And I'm honestly not mad at it. It's kind of, You probably have some familiarity with macrame already, but whence does it originate? I'll show you some of the ins and outs, some of the basics that you'll need to get started. Okay, but hold up, because I'm about to blow y'all's mind. Friendship bracelets are just macrame. So after this video, it's gonna be way easier to make friends than you thought. It's a friendship bracelet. That's all it takes. Right? It's super easy. It's so easy. In fact, I'm doing it right now. Kind of. I'm messing it up right now. But first, I want to share with you 3 things that will help us get into this macrame project and give you some background into this ancient craft. Thing number 1, the word macrame, although it sounds French, actually comes from the Arabic Macrame, which is a striped towel or an embroidered veil. 13th century Arab artisans would knot together the ends of their woven projects, which produced a really elegant and efficient border. Sometimes this border even helped prevent things like flies from landing on horses and camels. That brings us to thing number 2. The trade industry, territorial conquest, and many ships all took the artistry and utility of macrame throughout the seas and into the Victorian age, where it was historically most popular. Hey sailor, know a couple knots? Yeah, probably. Macrame was a favored pastime for sailors who were aboard vessels, and in their spare time, they would make hammocks and belts and all sorts of macrame goods, which they would sell at their various ports they'd stop at. This made them a few extra shillings on the side and kept their minds occupied, as well as continued to help spread macrame around the world. That brings us to thing number 3. As with all artistic endeavors, the craft vortex of the 1970s saw an incredible amount of intense activity in macrame. Everything we've talked about so far has had this explosion during that time that's been really fun and has taken the craft to a whole different level and brought it to a new audience. So what's not wonderful about that? Even if they use, a little bit of help from some hallucinogens and such. No shade. People were making everything. Purses, baskets, shorts, jackets, vests, furniture, aquarium holders, and this thing. Since then, macrame's had a bit of a decline, but we've seen it grow again in the last couple of years. People like to add feathers and beads to their macrame projects, but what I will show you today are 3 basic knots that'll help you get started. I'm gonna show you how to make a nice, simple wall hanging on this round hoop. I'll show you how to make a basic friendship bracelet, and then we'll turn that friendship bracelet into a leash. All those things flow together. They're all based on the same series of knots, as all macrame really is. And once you get started with that, you can take it anywhere. Take your time, but once you get the hang of it, you can go pretty quickly. Aside from that, use colors you like. Let's go. As I mentioned before, there are a lot of different materials we could use for these kinds of macrame projects. I'll be showing you the basics on some large size cotton cord, starting with the basic lark's head knot. All you do is fold your cord in half, take your loop underneath the thing that you're attaching it to, and then you pull the ends of that cord through the loop. Very, very easy. This is how a lot of your projects will get started, and it's the basis for a lot of basic connections and things like that. Make a loop with your cord, typically doubled in half, and then you'll slip that underneath the ring or the attachment that you're using, and then slip the ends of your cord back through the loop that you've just made. The next knot I show you is a very basic square knot. This is the foundation of a lot of work in macrame. You need 4 cords, 2 outer or working cords, and then your 2 inner cords, upon which you make all of your knots. Cross your right hand outer cord over the 2 central ones, and then bring your left hand working cord on top of that, and then behind, and then again out of the right hand working cord. It looks like a little pretzel, and then you just pull that up tight to the top. That's the first half of our square knot. And then we complete the same thing on the opposite side by making a 4 or a triangle on the one side with your working cord. Pull your other cord above that, behind the 2 central cords, and then back through your left hand working cord. And then once you've pulled that all the way up, you should see a little square in the middle, and that means you've got one complete square knot. I'll show this to you again a couple more times. And as you begin a sequence of these, starting from one side and then using the other, and then back and forth in that nature, until you complete your series of square knots, you'll start to see a pattern develop and a really interesting texture on all sides of the piece. Macrame is incredibly easy to undo, so you can make mistakes and then fix them quite easily just by undoing the knots. Next, I'll show you a half square knot. Again, a very typically used knot for most macrame projects. Using just 1/2 of the square knot in one direction gives you a half square knot. So that's the whole thing right there. Just the first half of what we've just done for the square knot. Except this time, instead of alternating the side that we start with, we'll continue using the same side every time we start our next knot. So in the square knot, we go from left to right, and so forth. For this one, we always start with the right-hand side, or we always start with the left-hand side, depending on which direction you want your turn to go. I'll continue a series of these knots from the same direction until I get that classic macrame staircase. By switching up the hardware to this lobster claw and using some parachute cord, I can take these same basic knots and produce a dog leash. This would take a lot of cord, so do be aware, but I'm just using the same basic knots, and not only am I making something that's beautiful, but this cable glows in the dark, so that will be helpful for nighttime walks. Of course, I'm using a lot of large scale stuff, but as I mentioned earlier, this is the same technique that a lot of us used to use for friendship bracelets and stuff. And you can see how that works with much smaller fiber. As promised, I'll also show you how to make an interesting wall hanging that's really affordable using these same 3 knots. We'll be using yarn in this case because it's inexpensive and we can find it in a nice variety of colors. And we'll start by using some lark's head knots just across the top. Of course, I'll be doing these in some kind of rainbowish pattern, maybe inspired by these little ponies here. And then I'm going to let the back part of this hang loose because I think that'll be really pretty against the wall. And then I'm going to take some yellow yarn and make a small netted section in the front using our basic square knot. I've attached these to this conveniently located bar in the front, And then I'll start by sectioning off square knots across this part until I'm satisfied with the effect that it gives. Obviously, these can be incredibly intricate if you've got the time, the materials, and the creativity to come up with a really interesting piece. But this one is meant to be really simplistic and just give you an idea of the kind of fun you could have with macrame. I recommend that if you are interested in macrame, there are a lot of wonderful tutorials that you can find right here on YouTube by a lot of different artists. Some of the videos that I've been watching are actually several years old, so don't be afraid to look back into the annals of YouTube a bit for some of those as well, because they can be just as informative as the newer stuff. To finish this project, I'll trim the ends, and then I added little knots to the end of the netted section, and that's the finished piece. You could take this much further if you like. You could add more tassels and different knots, and you could learn a lot of different techniques in macrame that you can make all your own. So now that you are a macrame master, I expect each and every one of you to send me friendship bracelets. I hope that you've had a good time today and that you have learned something that has been with us for a long time and maybe you can find a new purpose for. And what better way to start preparing gifts and little keepsakes for the holidays, perhaps? I hope that you are going into the weekend feeling inspired and that you are gearing up for a nice, relaxing weekend. You deserve it. You deserve a break. And so hopefully you can take that break and maybe enjoy some crafting along with it. I'll be here next week with something new. If you have ideas about what you'd like to see or do or maybe hear about, let me know. Leave a comment below. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And check back here next Friday morning for an all-new episode of Mr. Larrie's Craft Show. Bye.